Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Mat Report, courtesy of AM 930 WEOL and the Chronicle Telegram. Tim Alcorn with the radio station WEOL, and of course, Shaun Bennett from the Chronicle, as we get together each and every week on this video to talk about what's happening on the local wrestling scene. And again, a great big thank you to the Cobos Insurance Center for sponsoring this weekly video. Shaun, as always, great to be with you, great to talk wrestling, and certainly as we enter the holiday week, there isn't going to be a lot of action on the mats this weekend, but certainly a lot to talk about as far as what happened last week and last weekend on the mats.
Yeah, a lot of good tournaments going through. You're right, coming up, it's going to be a little bit altered. And it's weird every year because Christmas kind of changes, through the days of the week. It's always on the 25th, so it changes. So sometimes, and this year's one of them, it kind of works out to where you can possibly have a tournament on a weekend. And we do have some tournaments on the first weekend, some tournaments on the second weekend, a lot of holiday tournaments midweek. So it's kind of cool. You can actually, if you time it right, other than Christmas and like maybe New Year's, you can pretty much go see wrestling every day of the week for about 10 days straight, minus those two holidays. So it's kind of nice. If you like wrestling, you can get out there and see a lot of wrestling next 2 weeks or so.
Well, let's kind of take a quick look back as far as what happened last weekend on the mats. I know the Illiana High Pioneers were in a very prestigious tournament.
Right. They drove out to Delaware for the Beast of the East. They've been attending that tournament about 3 years now. Again, they were coming off disappointing for them tournament at the Ironman at Walsh Jesuit, which is the toughest tournament in the nation for the regular high school season. Beast of the East, they did do better. They finished 25th out of 121 teams, so very top quartile.
Absolutely. Respectable showing.
Yeah, top quartile. They did have a placer this time, which they did not have a placer at Ironman. Dylan Shaver finished 7th at 113 pounds. But even more importantly, just about everybody that Illyria took with them won a handful of matches. Dylan obviously won 4 matches to place. Josh Breeding won 4 matches. Brendan Fenton, Mick Burnett all won 3 matches. A lot of guys won 2 matches. So freshman Jake Evans won 3 matches. So marked improvement from the Ironman as far as the overall work as far as the team went.
And I know we talked about this last week on the video that you had bumped into Pioneer head coach Eric Burnett coming off that disappointing finish as far as the previous weekend. And he said, hey, we're going to keep working at this. We're going to build our way back. And it sounds as though they got a nice start on that last weekend.
Yeah, now the nice thing, too, is that from this point, they're going into a lot more manageable matches and tournaments. You just went up against nationally ranked opponents almost every round when you're up there. You're going against state places, state champions every time, and there's no rest. Not that they ever rest, but it's just like one brutal matchup after another at these last 2 events they've been at. Now they're going to be in events where they're kind of the top dog now. They're going to be going in, and but they're still going to have to work. They're going to have to show what they can do and go in there and kind of mentally shake off. Some of those guys are disappointed with what they did, even though they went in and won 3-4 matches. The fact that they didn't get on the podium maybe, or that the fact that they maybe lost a match where they thought they could win, they're going to have to kind of move past that, wipe the slate clean and go forward and kind of have a little bit of mental toughness at this point.
I want to take a moment or two and talk about the Firelands wrestling program. They were at a tournament last weekend as well, and certainly while the overall showing team-wise perhaps wasn't as strong as they would like it to be, boy, they had 3 outstanding individual performers.
Right. They were at that dual tournament where where it's basically team versus team, 14 weight classes versus 14 weight classes. And the big problem there, Josh said, Walbaum, the coach, said they had a lot of forfeits. They had a lot of weight classes where they didn't have guys able to compete, so they were dropping. You drop 6 points, it's like getting a kid pinned. Yep. when they forfeit. So they're losing 6 points on every one of those empty slots. So yeah, and even then, if you look through some of the scores, and I can't name them all now, most of their matches, most of their dual meets were pretty close. They lost all but one, but they still went pretty much within 20 to 35 points they scored in every dual meet. Mm-hmm. So obviously the 3 impressive performances were Peyton Bergdorf, sophomore, returning state placer, went 10-0. Their heavyweight, Shaun Lipscomb, also went 10-0. And Connor Eckman, 113-pounder, went 10-0 as well. So you got 3 guys that went in there and won all 10 matches in their dual meets. That's pretty impressive going forward because those guys are going to kind of anchor the Falcons team going forward. And when you get some of those guys back that are healthy and filling in some of those other spots, all of a sudden you're a pretty formidable lineup there at Firelands.
Boy, that's a great showing. So congratulations to those 3 wrestlers. Over at Black River, the JB Firestone, some strong performances from some teams and certainly some individuals over at the JB Firestone at Black River.
Yeah, and it's some performances that surprised me a little bit. Not that I'm saying that these teams weren't capable of putting up strong performances, but North Ridgeville didn't have a lot of big names coming back. They didn't have these like multi-time district qualifiers or state places in their lineup. But they go into a 13-team field and they finish with the runner-up trophy. So
nice.
That's fantastic job for them. They had 8 placers there. Brookside also finished 4th. Oberlin, who definitely has been struggling with numbers, also doesn't have any what they call star guys, that have done put a lot of accolades up on the mat, but they go in and they get 2 finalists. And actually, Robert Bouchonville finished as a champion, 126 pounds. Riley Horning was a finalist; he finished runner-up as well. That's hugely encouraging for a program that's trying to get off the ground and running here, and to get a champion and 2 finalists, really good job for them.
I know when we had our wrestling preview show on the radio over at the Brew Kettle a couple of weeks ago, boy, new coach Gary Huff, he was really excited about taking over that program.
Yeah, and he's got them going obviously, and that's good to see because that's what you got to do. You got to build that excitement. He's probably going to get a biddy program, a youth program up and running, keep the excitement, enthused in there. And that's what you start to see. You start to see it like in this cycle where they just start churning out kids and getting better and better and better. And that's what, guys like, Eric did over at Illyria and, some of these other ones. And that's where it started.
Yep.
We're just seeing the start of possibly great things there at Overland.
Yep. Again, great job by Coach Huff. And one more team we want to mention real quickly before we get to our tip of the cap segment. Avon Lake had a nice weekend last weekend.
Yeah, Avon Lake finished 4 out of 23 teams at the Hudson Holiday Invitational. That's a big field. It's nice to see that because they had a good finish at their own tournament as well. And you're kind of thinking, well, it's the host mats and things. I said, teams kind of get up for when they're hosting a tournament. And in this one, they traveled down to Hudson and finished with 6 placers. Jake Berger was a finalist there. It's nice to see because it's starting to become consistent. You're starting to see Avon Lake put good performance after good performance in the tournament. So that's something nice, and that's what you need to basically get going, get rolling. And Avon Lake's definitely starting to turn the corner as far as taking a good program into doing great things.
All right, Shaun, you know what it's time for. Oh. Trevor Boyd of Vermilion got very excited about this last week. We understand that those kids were really fired up when they heard that Trevor Boyd got the Cobos Insurance Center tip of the cap. So we're going to do another Cobos Insurance Center tip of the cap as far as recognizing a wrestler this week. So, Shaun, this is a pretty unique story here. Let's share with our viewers.
Yeah, the tip of the cap this week is going to somebody who actually isn't wrestling right now. It's an Illyria wrestler, Illyria Junior, Farouk Muhammad. Farouk was a state placer as a freshman at Shaker Heights. Last year, he was the state alternate in a very tough district. Decided to transfer to Illyria, which means due to OHSA transfer rules, he has to sit the first half of the season. Now, while most guys in that situation are going to lift weights, they're going to run, they're going to build up endurance, they're going to practice and get ready for when they're eligible, Farouk's doing all that, I'm sure. But what he did this weekend was he went ahead and competed in the Cleveland State Open. The Cleveland State Open is a college tournament. It's a tournament. Open tournaments in college allow guys who are redshirting with college programs or guys who are good wrestlers who maybe aren't wrestling for their colleges to go ahead and have some competition and keep their skills sharp and stuff like that. So he goes into this tournament and he opens with a major decision over Christian Beach of Appalachian State. So he
beats a college wrestler.
Yeah, he shuts out a college wrestler. He then lost to Juwan Britton of Michigan State. comes back to win 9-2 over Edinburgh's Jensen Loris, and then lost a very tight 3-2 decision to Nolan Saxon of Central Michigan. So he goes in against 4 college wrestlers and goes 2-2. Super impressive for a high school junior.
Lost one by 1 point.
Yeah, lost one by 1 point. Dominated, one guy. So just thoroughly awesome to see that, he's not just doing the usual stuff to get ready. And he's a Super 30. The preseason big tournament for high school is the Super 32, and he went in the Super 32 in play. So he's definitely doing what he needs to do to hit the mat running when he's able to get out there and start competing for Illyria.
Definitely deserving of the tip of the cap. That's really cool. That's a great story.
Super impressive, yeah.
All right, before we wrap things up, for those of you who not only enjoy the video but enjoy the radio program that we have on WEOL, want to remind you this week's radio program will be on Wednesday night. Cavs taking on Chicago on Thursday, so we're going to bump the radio portion of the wrestling recap to Wednesday night. So it's a Wednesday night radio show, but for this week's edition of the video program, I think this puts it to an end.
Yeah.
Good stuff this week, though.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, a lot of action, and it's obviously going to be a little different going forward because of the Christmas is going to change some things up. So next week we're going to have a little different, some different things in mind for you, a little something funner. So, no, funner? More fun?
More fun.
More fun, sorry. But yeah, it'll be a lot of good, information. So definitely tune into that one.
So next week we'll return after the holidays. So for all of you, have a very Merry Christmas and a wonderful holiday season. And we look forward to talking to you next week, as Shaun said, with a very special program lined up for Christmas week. So on behalf of Shaun Bennett, Tim Alcorn saying thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you again next week on the Mat Report.